Hey, it's Jordan with the Young Turks, TYT Politics here in Flint, Michigan. I'm here at the law offices of Gregory Gibbs, your private practice, but you've also been with the ACLU for decades. And you are representing 5 out of the 6 of the Flint residents who were arrested at the town hall on April 20th. You and I have been talking through email and for a story I did, so it's good to meet you in person. So, to remind you, if you're just coming to this for the first time, April 20th, there was a town hall at a church. The mayor has been doing town halls frequently, addressing the water crisis. This town hall, from what I got from residents, was a little different. They didn't really recognize the police officers who were there in the church. The police officers were armed, and the police commissioner at the beginning of the town hall had essentially warned that if residents, quote, got out of line, they'd be escorted out and arrested.
Please don't be in here trying to disrupt this meeting, because if you do, I'm going to escort you out, and I'm only going to take you to the back door, and then you're going to jail. I'm not going to play with nobody tonight. That's just how it's going to be.
And that's what happened. So 6 residents were arrested. The city, the next day, telegraphed the charges that they're going to be going for, including disorderly conduct, including interfering with a police officer, and the most serious of assaulting a police officer. So since then, that was 26 days ago, we're kind of in this, quagmire of not knowing what exactly is being investigated, where that investigation is at. None of these residents have had any communication, and as the lawyer will tell you, neither have you. How'd you get involved with this case in the first place?
Well, I'm the chair of the Greater Flint ACLU, and we received a complaint from a concerned citizen who observed, I don't know if that individual observed the actual arrest take place or the video. Could have been your video that they observed. And they indicated that they were concerned that these individuals at this meeting had been arrested because they were expressing their opinions, and that this violated their constitutional rights.
And you and I were talking, but can you talk to me about the normal procedure for something like this? Because they were arrested, brought to lockup, let out the next day, but there were things that did not happen that raised concern.
Yeah, the normal procedures, if somebody is charged with disturbing the peace, which I'm assuming most of the charges are going to be, they're given a ticket and they're asked to appear in court on a later date. If it's a serious charge like assaulting a police officer, there may be an arrest and incarceration. In this case, everyone was incarcerated, arrested and incarcerated, held in jail overnight, and then released pending further investigation. That's unusual for a couple of reasons. One is if someone is charged with assaulting a police officer, they're normally brought in front of a judge and arraigned, and a bond is set because there's concern about the safety of individuals. That didn't happen here. In the other cases, it's unusual that they were held in jail overnight. And it's an unusual case.
And in terms of the city, pretty much what I've gotten from the city and what they put out into the public is pending further investigation, whatever that means. But typically an investigation, you would speak with some eyewitnesses maybe, maybe the people you're accusing. What does that word investigation means? It seems like a vague kind of whatever you want it to mean.
Well, yeah, investigation, it means just that. When somebody is under suspicion of criminal activity, it's the job of the police to do an investigation. And in a case like this, where there is an alleged crime committed in the presence of a police officer, it's the police officers themselves who are witnesses and provide the information for the investigation. So they were all present at the time of the alleged offense. They should have all completed their police reports, and their police reports should all be typed up and be given to whoever the prosecuting authority is going to be. It's unusual for a pending investigation in this kind of a situation to last this long.
In your experience, you've been doing this for 40 years, you said?
40 years, yeah.
So you see a public town hall like this. It was at a church, but it's a town hall, so I would believe there's open public meetings rules. To have the police commissioner from the beginning, He's asking people to take off their hats. Okay, at a church. Okay, if you want to put that to the side, he's basically telling people, I'm not messing around. You know, if you disrupt this meeting, you're being escorted out and taken to jail. What exactly by law is disrupt this meeting? And does the police commissioner basically have the authority just based on his interpretation of what is disrupting a meeting, which in this case, these people have been poisoned. Let's call it what it is. Have you seen something like this before?
Well, here's my concern about this situation. Okay, this was a meeting held by government officials to talk about the Flint water problem and part of their alleged or proposed resolution in terms of future water supply. It was a public meeting. It's a public forum. It's being arranged by the government. Okay, they held it in a church, and what I'm concerned about is it appears to me that these public officials decided that they would implement the church regulations for a public meeting rather than use public regulations for a public meeting. And when individuals at the meeting complained about that, some of the evidence that I've seen is that they were arrested. They were ordered out of the facility and arrested. I'm concerned about that. The First Amendment protects the right of citizens to speak their minds in a public forum. If this was a church, a private setting, where the church was the sponsor of the meeting and it wasn't a public forum, it would be a different situation. So, yeah, I'm concerned that the police maybe forgot their place there and decided they would enforce the church rules rather than follow the Constitution.
And let me ask you, starting with the lower charge, so disorderly conduct. Is it disorderly conduct if a resident curses in a church or a resident is loud? You know, they have these two sides of the church with two microphone stands that residents lined up at to ask questions, and a lot of them made comment. What is disorderly conduct on paper, and does anything that happened there kind of fall into that?
Disorderly conduct is kind of a vague charge. Disorderly conduct, in order to be prosecuted in terms of case law, has to be conduct that interferes with or threatens the meeting. Okay, so the question here is, when someone complains about the venue and there's cheer and applause, whether or not it's constitutionally permissible for the government to charge disorderly conduct, and I don't think it is. If someone were to, well, I'm not going to speculate as what it might be in that setting, but in my opinion, what I saw on video was not disorderly conduct.
And we've seen in cases around the country the last few years that without video, police occasionally can make up whatever story they want. But in this case, we have video. Ty behind the camera got us some great video. So at least on the video, an objective person, nobody sees assaulting a police officer. So in general cases, when they make that claim, doesn't there have to be a very clear example?
Well, an assault, I mean, in order to establish a case of assaulting a police officer or someone who witnesses the event has to testify that they were physically touched without their consent by another party, okay, or that they were threatened with harm. So it can be a police officer's word against the person's charged word. It can be the police officer's word along with other witnesses, but they have to have some kind of evidence.
And in this case, I know you can't detail conversations with your clients, but as far as my conversations with them, none of them have been contacted by the police. Is that normal, that if there's an investigation going on, they wouldn't have a court date or any type of communication on what is happening?
Well, again, it goes back to the way this arrest went down. the normal procedure would be to give them a ticket, which is the official charge, and the ticket would be filed with the court, and there would be a court proceeding set. That didn't happen. Releasing them pending further investigation means that the police officers are compiling police reports and getting them over to the prosecuting authorities. In a situation like this, all of the evidence was available at the time it happened. All of the witnesses that they're going to have that will support that evidence were there at the proceedings, and all the reports should have been done fairly quickly. So it's unusual that we're now almost a month away and nothing's happened. And let me make it clear. We hope that the government will decide that they shouldn't prosecute these individuals and reconsider, any prosecution or any thought of prosecution, because these individuals were simply exercising their First Amendment rights.
Not from a legal perspective, but just as somebody who obviously cares about the Constitution and human rights, it seems like we're in a dangerous territory because we've seen in a lot of areas freedom of speech under attack. I covered the pipeline in North Dakota. We see other states now creating these laws that try to criminalize. It's veiled attempts to criminalize freedom of speech, and now in this case, you have citizens who are rightly frustrated and angry being arrested. Are you concerned, bigger picture,
Yeah, I'm definitely concerned, bigger picture. But, you've got to understand there is a line, and someone who is in a public forum and is unhappy with what is going on can't disrupt that public forum and interfere with other people's ability to speak themselves. So, if there is activity that actually interferes with that forum and interferes with other speech, it's probably subject to prosecution. But that's not what happened in this particular case. In this particular case, people articulated their opposition to the use of a church facility. Mm-hmm. There was a cheer. And then everyone was ordered out, and there were arrests. And when people were ordered out, what I saw was that they were expressing their unhappiness or their opinions that being ordered out was not fair. They were using the term bullshit, and apparently that was a trigger word that resulted in the arrest of an individual. Quite frankly, I think that was protected speech.
So. That individual, by the way, as a result of being essentially tackled, had bruises along her arm.
Sure, yeah. The other individual that I saw that was arrested on the tape, who had voiced some opposition to what was going on, was outside of the church facility and was basically voicing his opinion that the tactics were fascist. And then a police officer walked up behind him and put cuffs on him. So,
well, it's interesting because on the video you see he has a police officer in front of him, and he's expressing this, and you see a police officer behind him already preparing. He has the cuffs and he's inching forward. So it's almost like there was this this preparation almost to arrest if residents express themselves.
Well, they were having a conversation, and apparently it didn't go the way the police officer wanted. When you look at the video, that's what it looks like, okay? Now, maybe they have other evidence that they think will support a prosecution, but based on that videotape, that was Mr. Delgado, I see no basis for arresting him. He was simply telling the police officer that he thought their tactics were fascist, and if the police officer was unhappy with being called a fascist, he doesn't have the power to have the individual arrested simply for expressing that opinion.
And broader picture, I know that over the last years, the Flint Police Department has shrunk in size. A lot of cuts being made here, other cities. What I found interesting, like I said, was most of the residents said they didn't recognize a lot of those officers. Do you think there's a problem in Flint in general? I know you're not trying to condemn them, but with over aggressive behavior like this?
Quite frankly, I don't know that that's the case. Police officers have a difficult job. I have a lot of respect for police officers. Police officers are also required to follow orders, and in this particular case, I think one individual police officer, or maybe a couple of them, were giving orders, and the others were just following those orders.
It also seems
I was upset when I saw Ms. Leah, her last name,
Palladino.
yeah, slammed down on that cabinet. That was absolutely unnecessary.
Especially when 20 seconds before she said, "I'm disabled."
Yeah, she also said bullshit. But it was bullshit.
I want to ask you, I think, obviously this isn't a legal question, but I grew up in Long Island, not like super rich, but not poor. Definitely better socioeconomic conditions than here. If the Flint crisis with the water happened there, the mood would be very different inside a church town hall. I think they'd probably be a lot nicer to us, more empathy applied. Probably no cops with guns either. Do you think in cities like this, you're seeing a kind of a set of different responses and behaviors towards people in basically an environmental racism in my view?
Well, I was surprised by the show of force at that town hall meeting. I don't have any information that would lead me to believe that a show of force like that before the meeting or during the meeting was necessary. And when I use the term show of force, I mean there were a number of police officers there, and they were armed, and it was almost like they anticipated some kind of riot of some kind. But as far as I knew, as far as I saw, there was no basis for having that feeling.
And also something that I found really telling was they had a paddy wagon in the parking lot waiting.
I've heard that. I haven't actually seen the evidence of that, but that's what I've been told.
So what's the next steps? I mean, you seem to be as in the dark as I am.
Yeah. Well, we'll just wait and see. And at this point, we're just hoping that the government reconsiders and does not issue criminal charges.
Do you feel, in terms of, you said at this point, almost a month in, you'd have the paperwork put forward and it would be a little more advanced, the investigation. Could it be interpreted that they're essentially trying to just let it go and, they know they screwed up and they're trying to let it just fizzle out without much attention on it?
Well, I'm not gonna try to interpret what they're doing based on the delay. We just hope that they reconsider the charges if they are going to bring them, and not bring them. That they don't prosecute these individuals for exercising their right to speak.
And last question, broader than just Flint, but I did a video the other day because I'm sick and tired of hearing about our democratic institutions being under attack, like this is suddenly a new thing under President Trump. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm not a fan of President Trump, and I think he is escalating those attacks. But it seems like the media in particular is making it seem like everything was rosy before Trump. You're with the ACLU. Have you seen this pattern of the right to protest, freedom of religion, basically slowly being, I would say, more conservative state governments are chipping away at it?
Well, you know what? I think depending on who's in control and who's in power, the First Amendment is always in need of protection. The thinner the skin, the more protection that's necessary. And I think when government officials screw up, like they did in Flint, that the skin gets really thin, and as a result, they tend to overreact to opinions that they don't like.
Well, I bring it up. You don't have to comment if you don't want, but I mean, North Dakota, we saw unarmed people brutalized under a Democratic president, and there was very little talk about it. So it seems like as much as we need to focus on what happens under the current president, it seems like it needs to be consistent, the outcry.
I agree. I think we should always vocalize our opposition to policies that we don't like, and do it in a way that is permissible, constitutionally permissible, and that if we do that, we shouldn't be punished for it.
Thank you for taking the time. Appreciate it.